Welcome along. We're doing a deep dive today into, well, a pretty complex global picture. We've got a global briefing here, and we're pulling out some fascinating threads, geopolitics, financial markets, some really critical environmental stuff too.
Yeah, the goal is really to, cut through the noise, connect some dots between things that might seem separate, and figure out what really matters in the bigger picture. It's a world full of tension, but also, maybe surprisingly, resilience.
Okay, so let's get right into it. We're looking at everything from shaky ceasefires and frankly historic market moves to some urgent environmental warnings. Let's kick things off in the Middle East. U.S.-Iran tensions are still, well, simmering.
They really are. You had Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei talking about dealing a heavy slap to the U.S. and even warning about more strikes on American bases. Strong words.
Very strong, but here's the twist.
Exactly. The fascinating part is that alongside all this high tension, there's actually a fragile ceasefire in place between Iran and Israel.
It seems almost contradictory.
It does. It shows how even with all the public posturing, there can be these pragmatic steps happening behind the scenes, or at least attempts at them.
And this specific ceasefire, it came about after that incident on, what was it, June 23rd. Iran launching missiles towards Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar.
That's the one. Now, several were intercepted, thankfully, but one apparently did get through. No casualties reported, which is key.
But that action, strangely enough, seems to be what led to the ceasefire agreement. Maybe a calculated move, a show of force to create space for talks.
It certainly looks like a possibility, a kind of calibrated escalation, maybe, that then allowed for a step back. Now, if we connect this wider instability, it's definitely hitting the financial markets.
Right. Let's talk money. The U.S. dollar, it's had its worst first half since, wow, 1973, down over 10%.
That's a significant drop. And it raises the question, how are investors supposed to read these tea leaves? What do you do with signals like that?
Well, and here's where it gets really interesting. Because that dollar decline, it seems mostly driven by expectations of Federal Reserve rate cuts. But also political instability. You've got President Trump publicly criticizing Fed Chair Powell again.
Which just adds another layer of unpredictability for the markets, doesn't it?
It really does. But while the dollar's down, look at the euro, the Swiss franc, they're stronger. And global stocks, the NASDAQ 100, the big tech index, and the broader MSCI indices are actually hitting record highs.
It's that classic push-pull we sometimes see. Risk off in one area, like currency, maybe driven by Fed expectations, but risk on elsewhere.
You mentioned defense stocks earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Boosted by NATO support, or at least the perception of increased global tension needing more defense spending, they're showing some resilience. It tells you where some capital sees perhaps a safer haven right now.
Speaking of NATO, let's pivot there. The summit in The Hague, June 24th, 25th, big pledges on defense budgets, right? Some countries talking about maybe 5% of GDP.
A huge target for some. The new Secretary General, Mark Rutte, he really emphasized shifting towards a, quote, wartime mindset. That phrase alone tells you a lot about the current global mood.
Yeah, it certainly does. And there were key meetings there, too. President Trump with Zelensky, with Erdogan. A lot of diplomacy happening alongside the military posturing.
Definitely. Now, shifting back to the U.S. domestic scene for a moment, President Trump's legislative package is hitting some hurdles.
Ah, yes. The Senate rules. A key bit targeting Medicaid got ruled out of bounds. Reconciliation rules, probably. So now Republicans need to either rewrite it or find 60 votes, which is tough.
Very tough. And the bill's also catching flack for what some are calling a revenge tax on foreign investors. So internal battles alongside the international ones.
Okay, so we've covered geopolitics, markets, domestic policy, but there are these broader global issues too. Today, June 26th, is the International Day Against Drug Abuse.
Right. And the theme this year is Break the Cycle, #StopOrganizedCrime. It's a powerful reminder of how intertwined global drug trafficking is with organized crime, and how that fuels addiction and instability, often in regions already facing other challenges.
It's a huge underlying issue, and that, sadly, connects to another really alarming global concern, something affecting the planet itself, this historic coral bleaching event.
Yeah, running from 2023 basically through to 2025, it's being called the worst ever recorded. We're talking about estimates around 84% of global reefs being affected.
84%, that's just staggering. Driven by rising ocean temperatures, of course.
And the recovery timelines. Very uncertain. It's a massive environmental crisis unfolding right now, crossing all borders.
So in just a short time, we've jumped from, tense negotiations in the Middle East to stock market paradoxes, to Senate rules, and now to the health of our oceans and the fight against organized crime.
It really highlights how interconnected everything is, doesn't it? These aren't separate stories. They influence each other, sometimes in really complex and unexpected ways.
Absolutely. So when you step back and try to connect these dots, what really jumps out at you? Is it maybe the fragile stability emerging from conflict,
Yeah.
or the sheer unpredictability of the markets right now?
Or perhaps how these slower burning crises like environmental damage or organized crime can actually undermine everything else over the long term.
It's clear global events rarely happen in isolation. So maybe something to think about as you go through your day is how might these big shifts, political, economic, environmental, ripple out and touch different parts of your world? We hope this deep dive helped connect some of those dots for you.